Hi! I'm Wolfie, Chapter 1, Shipwreck and First Steps to Survival. Steve stood on the deck of his ship, looking out at the vast expanses of Minecraft, a world where reality is formed from blocks, and where each block opens up new opportunities for adventure. He was ready to discover new lands, to face new challenges that awaited him in uncharted waters. But the cloud cover was rapidly thickening, and the sea, which was calm and clear just moments ago, turned dark and turbulent. The wind was picking up, and Steve knew a storm was inevitable. He clung to the wheel, trying to keep the ship under control, but the elements crashed onto him with renewed force. The thunder of waves was deafening, and the ship, previously seeming so powerful and invincible, was thrown onto underwater rocks. Steve felt the ship begin to sink, and at the last moment managed to grasp a wooden debris that had surfaced nearby. His body was cold and wet, but he clung to this piece of wood, his only chance for survival. The current pushed him further and further away from the site of the shipwreck until, at last, it washed him up on the shore of an unknown island. The sun was setting when Steve stood on the sandy shore, looking at the waves in which his ship had just disappeared. He tasted the salty taste on his lips and felt weakness in his body, but he knew he had to act. Time and resources were limited, and he couldn't afford to rest. The first thing Steve decided to do was to search for resources in the ship's wreckage. He dove into the water, piercingly cold after the storm. His eyes quickly adjusted to the darkness, and he began to explore the underwater world. There, amidst the seaweed and corals, he saw scattered blocks from the ship, materials, and to his surprise, a few intact chests with supplies. Despite the fatigue and cold, Steve managed to gather several useful items, wooden blocks, wool for a bed, and even a few bags of provisions. He also found several blocks of glowing stone that could serve as a source of light during the night. But his tasks didn't end there. Steve knew that to survive, he would need to secure water and food. He was delighted to discover a small stream not far from his shipwreck. The water in it was clean and fresh. Steve filled a flask and drank a few sips with relief. Next, Steve went in search of food. He was pleased to discover some types of edible plants and berries that could serve as his food in the near future. He gathered them and returned to the site of his future shelter. The sun was already beginning to set when Steve started to build. He chose a spot next to the stream and began construction. Using the found wooden blocks, he built walls and a roof, and the glowing stones provided light inside. Tired but content, Steve looked around his new shelter. It was simple but cozy. The first day on the island was over, and Steve was ready to face the first night. He was alone, but he was alive. And he knew he had every chance of surviving. For next chapter, I need 5,000 likes. Subscribe!